In today's deep dive, we're going to speak to Bianca Stern, the general manager and founding member of All Things Equal. Now, All Things Equal is a Melbourne-based social enterprise empowering people with disability through award wage employment, purposeful training and pathways to rewarding careers in hospitality.
The organisation recently put out an equal opportunity white paper, which it calls a blueprint for disability employment in hospitality. And this report is basically a call to action for the entire hospitality sector, which it says is at a turning point. The paper says, quote, "We can continue to complain about staff shortages, or we can widen our hiring lens and future-proof our industry." To talk us through inclusive employment in hospitality and how All Things Equal is paving the way for the rest of the industry, we are joined by their GM, Bianca Stern. Bianca, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We are so happy to be chatting to you today. But for those listening who might not be as familiar with All Things Equal, what do we need to know about the organisation? How would you describe it?
Yeah, so All Things Equal is a hospitality-based social enterprise based in Balaclava in Melbourne. We provide training and award wage employment for people with disability in the hospitality sector.
So what inspired you to get involved? Where did All Things Equal come from, and how did we end up with you leading this mission?
So I have to preface, I'm not the only person that's leading this. We've got an amazing team of people that we work with, but essentially there are a bunch of different ways that this all came together. Our founder, his name's Jonathan. Jonathan's got a daughter called Tully who was finishing school at a beautiful special school called Giant Steps. And naturally he was concerned about what the employment landscape could look like for Tully, but he knew that the kitchen was the perfect environment where Tully absolutely thrived and continues to thrive today. So he had this concept of All Things Equal. He knew that if he wanted a place for Tully to thrive, he had to create an environment that was totally tailored to her and individuals like her. So at the same time as that, I was working on a pilot project helping individuals with disability to get into employment in local businesses. And then when I heard about All Things Equal, it was just something that I absolutely had to be part of.
Just aligned with your passions and what you were working on.
Very much.
Can you talk me through, for a person with a disability who might engage with All Things Equal, or for their families, how does the whole process work, from someone finding out about the organisation to actually being a part of it to their future employment? Tell us a bit about that process.
So we have an employment pathway model where individuals with disability over the age of 18 enter our pre-employment program, which is a 12-month work training program. So that's unpaid training, where we're learning the foundational skills of being ready to work and the hospitality sector. So transferable skills like punctuality, organisation, professional presentation, giving and receiving feedback. And within that, we've got a cooking school, a footy club canteen, and front of house training. Then when the individual successfully completes the program, they then enter employment in our cafe. And that is a sort of around 12 to 18 month long program where a trainee is supported by a hospitality trainer, and they work either front of house or back of house. So either serving customers or food preparation for our cafe and catering services. And then when we work alongside the individual to work out that they are ready to move on from our supportive environment, we support them to gain employment in other mainstream workplaces. So, for example, hotels or large restaurants, catering companies, places like that just genuinely want to have more inclusive workplaces and know that All Things Equal has a really great training program, essentially.
I'm interested in the sort of demand for these opportunities, the why of why this all came about. Normally when we see these organisations thriving, it speaks to a bit of a lack in other parts of society or a lack of other similar organisations. Can you tell me a bit about the infrastructure that may or may not be in place around that?
Yeah, so we've got over 100 people with disability on our wait list, which tells us from the start that we're dealing with a systemic problem, right? So We know that there are initiatives that do exist and have existed for many, many years to support people with disability and neurodivergent people to get into employment, but yet the unemployment statistic hasn't changed in over 30 years. So we're really dealing with something quite significant. There are over 2.2 million people with disability in Australia, and more than half of those individuals are unemployed or underemployed. We know that people with disability want to be in jobs and careers just like anybody does, but it's the first foot in the door that is always the challenge. We see cycles of people with disability going through programs, volunteering programs, work experience programs, where really the goal is that they want to get a paid job, an award wage paying job and a career. But really, when those sorts of things don't, when we don't see that transition into award wage paid employment, that individual just goes back into the cycle.
Yeah. And is that the feedback that you have heard from the people who participate in these programs, that this is the first time they've had access to these opportunities?
Very much so. So if I think about myself, or, in Australia, you can get a job at the age of 14 and 9 months. But yet most of the individuals that we support and we work alongside, and the individuals that are on our wait list, are from sort of around the age of 20 above. And almost every single trainee that has gone through our program has never, ever had a paid job before. So
wow.
This is someone's first ever foot in the door, which means that there is the inequity of already being behind by at least 5-6 years.
So obviously, Bianca, there are broad skills that are being learned by the people with disability who are part of All Things Equal, from front of house to back of house, cooking, catering, business and admin skills. What are some of the strengths that people with disability and neurodivergent people bring to those roles? Have you been surprised or learned anything from them?
I'm not surprised whatsoever, because I know that when someone is given the platform and the right support, the right workplace accommodations are put in place for the individual, every single person can thrive. And so we see our trainees excel in so many areas that I just wish more people in our society could see. You think about things like workplace culture and how much time and money these workplaces put in to try build this culture. We just have it when you walk through the door instantly, because the unique personalities and interests of our trainees are there from the forefront. You walk into our space and it's literally like getting a warm hug. You don't get that anywhere. I know that in past jobs I've never had that experience. We see incredible interpersonal skills. All of our trainees have fantastic work ethics, and really the reason why I think that might be the case, and why I often believe that our trainees make better employees than a lot of other people I know, is that they have worked so hard to get to the point where they are deemed being capable of getting a job. And they've already had to self-advocate so incredibly hard that when they finally have been put into a position like getting a job at All Things Equal, they are grateful to be in a job. And to be honest, it's a pretty sad thing to be thinking about, that someone has to feel grateful to be in a job when really it should just be a human right. When you think about what can change someone's life, you don't think about a job being part of it. What we don't realize is when someone's in a job, and when someone's in a job where they are genuinely valued and being compensated appropriately for their work, the sense of belonging, you've got a reason to get up in the morning. You know that you get to be part of a community where individuals genuinely respect you and accept you and want to see you thrive. People just take that for granted. But yet our trainees have had to work so hard to get to that point. And yeah, I guess I'm pretty lucky to know that I get to work in a place with such diverse people, such diverse skill sets, and people that are just so beautiful and awesome to call my colleagues.
It's so beautiful to hear you talk about it, and I can see and feel the passion and joy that it brings you and that you have for this role. You mentioned one of the founders, Jonathan, who was inspired to kind of create a better future for his daughter, to ensure that there were opportunities for her when she grew up. What kind of feedback have you gotten from the families and the loved ones of people involved in these programs? This sense of community that you describe sounds so precious and special, but like it is maybe the first time a lot of these people have felt like part of a community.
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm the co-founder of the Daily Aus, and we started this company because we think news can be done differently. If you agree, you can hit subscribe. It's the best way to help us grow. Now, back to the video.
The feedback that we get told is that we are changing people's lives, that our trainees feel more connected to their family. You know, they feel confident to make dinner and set the table and want to be part of the dinner conversation. And when mum or dad or whoever it is talking about their work that day and what they got up to at work and the good things and the challenging things in their job, our trainees actually get to participate in that conversation.
Given all of that, I do want to ask you about barriers, the kinds of barriers that people with disability are facing in those traditional workplaces and traditional employment environments. What needs to change in that broader landscape, especially in hospitality? We're talking about the hospitality sector when we're talking about all things equal. What kind of reform are you pushing for?
So we have a goal at All Things Equal of being part of the solution of having 1,100 people with disability into hospitality jobs by 2035. We need to see a top-down approach from government as to how we're going to make that happen. And we can do so much better than that. That's just All Things Equal's goal. We see the challenges and the barriers start when someone's even trying to apply for a job somewhere else. It's the fact that if someone's never had a job, well, then what are they putting on their resume? It's the fact that when someone says that they might need an accommodation within the recruitment process, they're straight away deemed to be too difficult, in inverted commas. We're seeing people who might be much better at showcasing who they are and what they're capable of verbally or in a video, but yet the recruitment process says this is the way to do it and there is no room for negotiation with this. So we're seeing barriers from the actual start. Then when the person gets into work, if they actually get the opportunity to go into an interview, you've already got people there that are deeming that person to not be a good fit. And, you know, in Australia, you don't have to technically disclose if you've got a disability. But really, what workplaces don't already realise is that you already have a person with disability or a person who identifies as being neurodivergent in your workplace. And if you don't think that you do, they just haven't felt safe enough to communicate that with you. So that's telling us as well about what we are doing and what we are not already doing. You know, we see barriers around resources and how can we turn written expectations, in our case, or in the hospitality world, like recipes. All Things Equal has all our recipes in visual form. How can we do that? Because really that's supporting an individual with disability, but actually that might be supporting every person in the workplace, whether it's English as a second language, whatever it might be. It could potentially make any person's role easier.
And ultimately the business outcome's better.
The business outcome's better. And also, this doesn't technically answer your question, but in the hospitality world, it's a very transient workforce. You've got people who are going through university that are looking at hospitality as sort of just a short-term job before they may want to have a different career path. We've got people who genuinely believe that hospitality and customer service is a career for them.
Yeah. And
there's a barrier there around, well, it's just going to be too difficult. But really,
it's a longer-term investment.
It's a longer-term investment. When you're employing a person with disability, you are gaining so much more than you realize. And if we don't have the right setup in place and we don't have the right top-down approach and bottom-up approach from the employees, we aren't going to be able to get there.
So in terms of pushing for that reform, you've mentioned that there needs to be government action, policy shifting. Can you tell me about this white paper that All Things Equal has submitted?
Yeah, so All Things Equal has put together what we are calling our Equal Opportunity Report, which is our industry white paper, our call out to the hospitality industry and the workforce at large to say, hey, you know, we can actually do better at this and we can do this together. And this isn't, our approach is that we're not talking about all the things that aren't already working. We're saying we acknowledge that there's barriers, and there have been barriers to a person with disability being able to participate in society. But we now have a solution to this, and we as an industry and as a sector can actually do better together. So our white paper has heard the voices of individuals with lived experience, whether that's our trainees to disability leaders to people who run incredibly successful businesses who also happen to have a disability. And we have heard their voices and what they want to know and what they want to see. We have put together our suggestions for the sector as well. And we believe that when we have the right people open to these conversations, we can really get somewhere. And from our white paper so far, we have sparked some pretty interesting conversations with some really great businesses who we know genuinely want to be part of the solution, but just needed that little bit of a push to be able to do that.
I have kept you for long enough today, Bianca. You have plenty of important work to go and do, but as you know, good news stories are so fundamental to the kind of content that we want to do here at the Daily Aus. It's why we include a good news story in every newsletter, in our daily headlines, in our weekly newsletter, a whole newsletter dedicated to good news, because the world is a difficult and dark place at times. We need these positive stories to kind of remind us that there are people like you and organisations like All Things Equal doing amazing things, fighting the good fight. I wanted to ask if you had a good news story to share with us about All Things Equal.
Yeah. My good news story is that we have just supported, over the last 3 weeks, we've supported 4 of our trainees to gain employment outside of All Things Equal.
Oh my
which
gosh.
is pretty cool.
Amazing.
And we've got a long way to go. We've got over 100 people on our wait list. We need to keep going. But to know that we've impacted 4 different people's lives and their families' lives and everyone in their network is just the biggest privilege. It's this job and the role that I have is the absolute biggest privilege of my life.
Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you to the whole team and everyone who is part of All Things Equal. It's been so wonderful to hear more about the organisation and what you guys are doing. And thank you for coming and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. And if you're in Melbourne, come and say hello.
And of course, we will pop some links in the show notes, the episode description. If you want to learn more about All Things Equal or get involved or go and visit the cafe, please check it out.